Hello and a very warm welcome to Weekly Current Affairs. Today is Saturday. We'll be taking up the miscellaneous components of this week. As you all know, this is one such series where we'll be covering up current affairs from Monday to Saturday. From Monday, we'll be taking up various subjects and each subject is dealt on that day. So today, Saturday, I Madhusudan Reddy will be taking up the miscellaneous components which have been figured out in the last 1 week. And this is one area, the miscellaneous components, where the chances of these topics being asked in the examination is very high as per the previous understandings. Now let's quickly deal with the topics that we are going to take up here. The first topic that we will be taking up today is regarding the Telangana forest officer killing brings to the fore issue of Podu cultivation again. See, recently it is very unfortunate incident that the forest range officer has been killed by the tribal communities. It is because of a land issue that is regarding the Podu cultivation. It is figured out. We are going to discuss in detail about this. And the second one we'll be taking up is the great knot sighting untangles a migratory mystery. It is a bird which has been traveling from Siberia till Gujarat. So there are some changes in the flyways. A Konsa flyway say it has shifted, that we will be looking up, and some preliminary aspects point of view. And the other article we'll be going for is the community reserves which have been in news in the northeastern region. So the community reserves, it has been understood that काफ़ी ज़्यादा community reserves are now being converted and the government is in a spree to increase this community reserve area. And the last article we'll be taking up is regarding the millets in the mainstream, how Odisha, एक छोटा सा festival and a tribe, they have converted a particular crop into a millet crop and it is now getting accolades from all over the world. So let's begin with today's first article, that is Telangana forest officer killings brings to the fore issue of the cultivation of Podu cultivation again. See, firstly, let us understand what is a Podu cultivation. Podu cultivation is nothing but the shifting cultivation. So the tribal communities who are living in this area, especially who have travelled from Chhattisgarh and they settled in Telangana, they generally go for cultivation of Podu type. Now Podu is nothing but shifting cultivation where the lands are being cut. After the lands are cut, they burn the land and then that land is utilized for cultivation. Now who can do this kind of cultivation? It is generally, as per the Forest Rights Act, it is other traditional dwellers and forest rights which are given to the people who are living in the tribal area. Those people who have visited particular area before 2005 and they have been practicing this kind of cultivation, they are allowed to do. So in the recent times what happened is that a Kuti Kondiya tribe, this tribe has been involved in the Podu cultivation. So in the year 2008 to 2009 onwards, the government of Telangana is in a full spree to bring in the greenery in that state. So in 2015, they have come up with a program called Harita Haram. In this Harita Haram program, they wanted to convert all the unclassified areas or all the non-forested land by plantation process. So in this plantation of cultivation, what happened was there is a conflict that has arisen between the forest range officers and these Podu cultivators of the Kuti Kondiya tribe, and in an exaggerated event, the forest officer has been killed. So let's quickly see what the literature that has been in the newspapers. See, Podu cultivation is a traditional form of agriculture that local communities practice in the Eastern Ghats and surrounding area. It is not just in Eastern Ghats, it is also practiced in the central part of India, but these Podu cultivations have different names. Now what are these different names? Let's see. These are some things where preliminary examination में scope बनता है question पूछने का. Firstly, Jum cultivation is also another name. It is practiced in the northeastern states. You look into the Weaver or Dayar, this is a cultivation which is practiced in the Madhya Pradesh, Bundelkhand. Deepa, which is practiced in the Madhya Pradesh, again in the Bastar district. Zara and Erka in the southern states. Batra in the southeastern Rajasthan. Podu, it is in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, right? And Kumari cultivation in the hilly regions of the western Ghats of Kerala, and Kaman and Viniga, these are the other names in Odisha. See, in all this, the type of cultivation is nothing but shifting cultivation. The bone of contention issue here it is that the Forest Rights Act is generally an act which comes under the concurrent list, but amendments are always done by the central government. Here, there is a deadline that has been given that 2005 and before, whoever have come to a particular forest area, imagine this is a forest area, and in this forest area, who has been practicing this type of cultivation where people cut the forest and they cultivate the plantations. So only those people who have come before 2005 they are allowed to do. Now it is a contention that the Kutikondia tribe have come little later and started to do this practice. Now in this activity, the forest department of Telangana has come up with an agreement of that these are forest areas, these are non-forest areas, and the non-forest areas are no longer to be cultivated by the Kutikondia tribe. And in the forest areas also, if you are before 2005 you can cultivate, but after 2005 you are not allowed. So this clarity, lack of clarity has led to the killings of the forest officer, and this is something which we need to know from preliminary aspect, right? And next, let's move to our next article. Our next article is a down to earth magazine published article. Here it is talking about the expansion by degree. Now what do you mean by this expansion by degree? Expansion by degree with respect to the community reserves or community forests. So there are different types of protected areas. One such protected area is your community reserves, and if you look into this, generally the data says that on an average since 2007 it has been bought nearly 13,000 square kilometers, which is as equivalent to the area of the national capital region. The government of India has converted a non-forest area into this community reserves. Now what exactly are these community reserves? These are nothing but the protected areas where the government or a local community they come and protect it. Now there are different types of forest. The classification of the 2021 forest report classifies forest as reserved forest, protected forest, and unclassed forest. Before we go and learn these topics, I want you to know few fundamental aspects. One, a protected area is one such area which can be sanctuaries, it can be national parks, it can be conservation reserves, it can be community reserves, or it can be tiger reserves. Now we are going to discuss about the community reserves today. So recently in the northeastern area, the government of India started to make some memorandum of understandings between the forest department of that state and the local tribal community owned lands or unclassified forests. Now in this MOU, when they break an MOU between these two, the tribal lands or tribal people, unclassified forest, the government has all the rights to implement whatever is given in the community reserves as per the Wildlife Protection Act. In other words, simply I have to tell you that if suppose this is an unclassified forest, right? I'll tell you the definition of this unclassified forest in some time. Now for some time understand that this is an area of forest where you have some irregular landforms, and this forest is not owned by, it is owned by either government or it is owned by community or it can be owned by local people. But on paper you will not be owning it. By traditional practices you will be owning it. Maybe I might be living in this area and I have been for the last 50 to 60 years I have been using this land without I being registered, I getting registered. Now in this I can go for shifting cultivation, I can go for hunting, I can go for small scale minor forest produce activities. But this is also a forest area, right? Because a forest is defined in a different way. So now government comes and makes an agreement between the tribal people or other traditional forest dwellers that government is going to protect this forest through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Now this Memorandum of Understanding is that government will start to protect this area by converting this area into a community reserve, right? So once this area is declared as a community reserve, people who are living in this tribal area and other traditional forest dwellers, they no longer have the rights to go into the interior and collect the minor forest produce, use this land for cultivation or use this for hunting purpose. So this becomes an area of around community reserves. This has been, the community reserves is constitutionally came from the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. This is where the community reserves are defined. Now once these community reserves are declared, it comes under the purview of the Government of India. Now who takes care of this? It is wildlife, chief wildlife warden of that particular state. So this is now managed by the government, but government is completely not owning it. The memorandum of understanding between the government and the tribal officials or tribal local landlords, or maybe, sorry, it is not tribal local landlords, it is tribal local leaders who will have this agreement. So usually the government will take care for 5 to 7 years, and after that the role and function of the government is finished. No longer the government has the rights to take care of this, and the memorandum of understanding is finished. But later, the issue here is that once this area is converted into community reserves, even after 5 to 6 years of the government's MOU time period is done or finished, here this is still a community reserve and the people here do not own any rights. So suppose you are the tribal people and earlier your dependency was on this land, and why would you lose this land and never get back, and you can no longer utilize this land for yourself? So here it comes an issue that in the recent times, if you look into the data says that in the northeastern states alone, if you see, Arunachal Pradesh has 9 community reserves, Nagaland alone has 114 community reserves, Manipur has 10. Now if you look into the rest of the part of the India, it is generally, you see Punjab has 3 community reserves, Haryana 5, Karnataka 1, Kerala 1. But northeastern Meghalaya 71, Nagaland 114, Arunachal Pradesh 9 and Manipur 10. Now the states of northeast India are not happy with this type of conversion and the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, because of course earlier they were utilizing these lands for their day-to-day livelihood purposes. Now you develop, they are asking to government to come and develop it, but little later they understand that this land can no longer be utilized even after 5 years. But the government has a different perspective. Now what is the perspective of this side, that also let us look into. So before that, let's quickly deal with the definitional terms of the India State of Forest report in the 2021. It has said that the forest can be divided into 3 different types. One is reserve forest, other one is protected forest, and the third one is unclassified forest. See, reserved forest and protected forest, here it can be a tiger reserve, it can be a wildlife sanctuary, it can be a national park. These are your areas of higher grade of protection. But when you look into this unclassified forests are those forests which is not a reserve forest, which is not a protected forest, but other forest where it is not coming unto these characteristics. So Government of India has concentrated on these areas, and these areas are now being converted into community reserves under the Wildlife Protection Act. So you are a tribal land, tribal holders, I as a government will come and make a MOU. Through this MOU I will say that for 5 years I will develop this land and I will be taking up your rights, and after this no longer you are going to get rights. So this is a illogical activity as per the tribals point of view. But why would the government do this? Why would the tribals agree to it? There should be a logic, right? So let's look into that logic as well. So quickly, before that, quickly read the definitional aspects here. See, first one, reserved forest. Reserved forest have the maximum protection. Yes, they have the maximum protection with all activities prohibited unless permitted by the forest department, right? So here permission is given by the chief wildlife warden. Chief wildlife warden gives the permission. Next, protected forests have limited degree of protection where all activities are permitted unless prohibited by the forest department, right? See, activities can be done, but if they are asking to prohibit this particular activity, then that cannot be done. The third one, here unclassified forests are areas recorded as forest but not included in reserved forest or protected forest categories. They can be owned by the government, communities, clans, individuals. This category of forest primarily being converted into community reserves, right? Now let's see some nitty-gritties in this. Through which act this can be converted? It is through Wildlife Protection Act. Secondly, the protected areas of India which typically act as buffer zones to national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, these are the areas which are being converted into the community reserves, so that the buffer area of the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries can be conserved. Now here, directly or indirectly, the tribal people who are given the rights under the Forest Rights Act of 2005, they are losing their rights indirectly, but the forest area is being protected. Now for this, don't you think that these people need to be compensated? Yes, of course, they need to be compensated. The compensation comes in a different way. The government's perspective here is that they are going to come and develop this landmass, right? They are going to convert this area into complete forest, right? So these areas are most of the times around a national park, a wildlife sanctuary, which are acting as a buffer zone. So earlier this area is owned by the tribal people and their practices. Now they have given this land for the government for 5 years and they have developed. Here the issue here is that 5 years government will come and invest. Later the joint forest management will take place. Those areas which are converted by the government, this particular area, the joint forest management will take place, or the resources that are coming or arising out of this will be utilized by that particular community itself. So this is a win-win situation, of course, but in this win-win situation there are some issues, the bone of contention issues, that it is not being implemented properly, right? So some of the examples which are very, very successful are in the Meghalaya, but today Meghalaya itself is opposing for that. You know, the problem here is that around 33% of the total forest in India is in 8 states. Out of this, 5 states are from Northeast, and this is where the government of India is concentrating on converting this area into community reserves. So of course the people or the tribal people livelihood is dependent on this, and at the same time, if this area they wanted to extend slowly, the areas of national parks are being extended, and in this consideration the people who are living, they are also losing their forest rights now, and this, instead going for joint forest management, they are being pushed outside this joint forest management area. So the multi-dimensional issue here is that they are not being able to properly implement this act. Therefore the center notifies once the community reserves has few prohibitions. What are these prohibitions? Let's see. It says that people are not allowed to hunt, right? Of course, collect non-timber forest produce, they are not supposed to do. Use it for agricultural practices, they cannot do. Cultivation of any kind, no. Hunting and fishing, no. But when this is given for 5 years for the development of government of India, what rehabilitation activities are done? So these rehabilitation activities are something which we need to look forward. Here the government of India is failing to take up the rehabilitation activities, right? And few facts which are listed here, it is said that the Nagaland, which recorded the forest area, the total forest area in the state is around 8623 square kilometers, of which 8389 square kilometers, that is 97% of the total Nagaland forest are unclassified. So the government potential is to convert this 97% of the total area of the forest of Nagaland into a community reserve, so that for the future it can get benefited for both the community as well as the forest, and they can live in a holistic sustainable development manner. But here rehabilitation is the issue. Come back. Now there are some few aspects with regard to the joint forest management which has been given in the article. How are they planning to do? What are the methodologies that the government is going to involve? The guidelines and the implementational methodologies says that there shall be going to be a joint forest management, and in this joint forest management a separate account will be opened in this community, and a deposit will be drafted every few months later whenever the work in that forest area is being completed, which is already designated by the forest department through chief wildlife warden. It simply means that the chief wildlife warden will decide what kind of activities need to be taken. Maybe ecotourism ho sakta hai, maybe bird watching can be there, so people from here they can go to the northeastern region and get into those areas and go for bird watching. So for that there can be a ticket. That ticket can serve as some amount of money will be given to the government, and some amount of the revenue will be shared with the local communities. So this is something very good, but the joint forest management implementation is not up to the mark. So here you see periodic installments on the basis of conservation and livelihood projects that have already been approved by the Ministry of Forestry to be undertaken in the community reserves. So what are the developmental activities that need to be taken in the community reserves is priorly determined by the government and not by the local people or the tribal people, right? Here it is also understood that a joint forest management committee, which consists of one person which is given from the forest side and 3% from the local villages, they will be taking care of the additional revenues or the further revenues which will be coming, and also those people who have lost the land because of this community reserves, they need to be compensated. Now this is also decided by the joint forest management committee. So these are some things which have been listed. Some factual data which can be asked in the examination, that is also listed here. For these kind of informations, you can also go to the Raj Malhotra IAS Telegram channel, and from there you can get this PPT done. So it is purely a factual content, old one which we have discussed many number of times. Now coming to the next article. Our next article is regarding a bird which flew all the way from Siberia to Gujarat, and in this it is understood that it has revealed few facts that rest of the parts of area such as China's LOC is being degraded. That's the reason why these birds are able to come to India. Before that, let's quickly move to article Great Knot sighting untangles a migration mystery. Now what is this Great Knot? Great Knot is a bird which is having its breeding seasons in Kamchatka Peninsula. It is Russia all the way. It takes a break at LOC and then comes to the Thailand, and it comes to the Gujarat Jamnagar area. So see here, this bird has some peculiar activities. First one, it has its breeding grounds here. For breeding, it will go to Siberia, and non-breeding seasons it will come to the Southeast Asia. But for the first time since the last 3 odd years, from last 3 years consecutively, this bird has been coming to Jamnagar, that is Gujarat area, which is also a marine national park area hai. Okay? It is also a marine national park area in the near to the Jamnagar. These birds are coming and settling there. So it is understood that the natural route of the bird is from a different flyway. Recently it is understood that it has changed its flyway. Now why the birds will generally change its flyway, that is what we have to look into. See, a bird when it travels across places, it has a particular route. It is generally understood that birds have the understanding of the magnetic field of the earth. So this magnetic field of the earth, if the birds can align and understand, that is what the route they are going to travel. Now see here, this is the Central Asian flyway where the birds use the particular route. They come to India, and this includes near about all the area of the Central Asia. This is how the birds fly. But recent times it is understood that the bird of Great Knot, it has changed its path. Usually its path is from the East Asian Australian flyway. It is East Asian, the red color area, East Asian, this is the pathway, that is East Asian Australian flyway. It has changed its path and entered into the Central Asian flyway. That means it has changed its route. Now why is it important to know the changes of this route? It simply means these kind of activities are an indication that particular area is degraded. For example, the general route of this bird is that it comes from Siberia and then gets into, just a minute, it comes from Siberia all the way and rests at the LOC. Here they have changed its pathway. Its pathway is that LOC, it is now under degradation, no longer the mud flats are active, because of which they are not being able to stay there. So they have changed their route, came across the Central Asia, came to India, that is Nagaland, and then it has now come to Gujarat. But how do we know that it has come all the way? Simply, these are tags, bird tags. If you can see it on the leg of the bird, they have been tagged. The Russia has tagged and named it as 6Z. It has named it as E6Z. This is the name of the E6Z batch, and that batch has come to India. So these kind of questions can be asked in the preliminary examination. The chances are very, very high. Next, before that, let us once quickly look into the Central Asian flyway and its importance. See, Central Asian flyway, India is completely in the Central Asian flyway. In this Central Asian flyway, we have 30 odd countries which are having 622 odd water bodies, plus regional importance is that the conservation of water bodies should be prioritized. This is an indication that if these birds have to come to India, the water bodies also need to be prioritized. And also at the same time, it's clearly indicates that the southeastern range as well as the LOC, that is already degraded, right? Now last article that we will be taking up is millets. See, recently a tribal community, that is Kutia Kond tribe, in the name of the Burlang Yatra, they are organizing every year, it's a traditional festival. Through that yatra they have revived the crop, and that crop is nothing but your millets. You already know that 2023 is the year of millets. In this 2023 year of millets, these kind of festivals are making a prominent role, and this is one such methodology which the government of Odisha is going to take forward for the further enhancement of the millets production as well as advertisements. See, what is Burlang Yatra? See, Burlang Yatra is nothing but a traditional annual festival of the Kutia Kond tribe, where seeds of this kind will be exchanged. The women come and they exchange these seeds. So usually in this tribe, their livelihood or their staple food was millets. From this staple food of millets, they have slowly, since last 2 decades, they have transformed themselves into a rice and the other forms of crops. So because of this festival and some involvement of the NGOs and the government, the festival has helped to revive the millets that they are growing back. So it is said that earlier the young and the youth of this particular community who are used to eat the millets, they were looked down. But today millets being promoted by the government of India, and also it is the 2023 crop of the world or millets year is taken as consideration. So these millets now got back the prominence. In this prominence, you need to know that some important aspects of the previous data. See, firstly, you look into the areas of the production. It is in the year 2014, it was somewhere around 17.20 million tons. But in 1949 to 50, it is also the same. There is not much of change. But see here, annual area under the millets, if you see 2013 and 14, it is 7.25 lakh acres, but go back and see in the 1949 to 50, it is around 51.44. Why did we move from this to this? Of course, food security is one of the reason, no doubt. Food security is the primary reason why did we move from this particular form of cultivation to this cultivation. But ultimately, we got to understand that millets plays a major role in getting the food balance, the nutritional balance across the human life. But it is also very important to know some few aspects of millets that are agriculture and healthy world which is considering for. Now firstly, millets play a major role in the food security. It is very nutrient rich, no doubt, and it is safety form for diabetes, because generally the glycemic index which is there, keeps it a stable rate. So in general, a millet once eaten in the morning, you don't feel hungry for the evening. Why? It is because slowly the millet starts to release the glucose in batch wise. If you take up rice in the morning, if you have taken it, generally rice will shoot up the glucose, and by the evening or after few hours you will feel low, the energy levels are low. So a person who is having diabetes, they generally do not have this tendency where they can wait for the glucose to digest. So usually it is advised to take millets as their crop. So some other important aspects, if you look into it, is nutritionally rich, ठीक है, requires less water, पानी कम है, इसीलिए it is grown in the semi-arid areas, and it requires moderate and fertile soil, not much of very fertile soil. If you go to Rajasthan, most of the areas are being cultivated by millets, especially bajra and all. And profitable crop, of course, yes, it is a profitable crop and drought resistant crop because it provides cheap and high nutrition options. Along with that, droughts, ज़्यादा पानी नहीं चाहिए, तो this crop can be grown anywhere. And lastly, long shelf life. Of course, once you grow this crop, even after 8 to 10 years also this crop yield can be eaten. So such a long shelf life is definitely required for our food security, and also the nutritional balance maintain करने के लिए काफ़ी ज़रूरत है. Now that's it guys, this is some of the important aspects which we have taken up in this session. If you would like to take up any particular topic, do drop a message or comment down in the comment section. We will be coming and taking up it. And for this PPT, you can go to the Raj Malhotra IAS Telegram channel and download this PPT. And also at the same time, there will be a question that will be asked from these topics which we have discussed in the link description in the form of Seize the Mains. You can go to that Seize the Mains and then write your answer and get it evaluated from our experts. Thank you guys and see you next week.